Before we get started, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video. That way, you'll always stay connected to our stories and never miss the next adventure. Officer Liam had scanned exactly 3,218 aliens in the past month. He knew this because the system kept count, displaying it in obnoxious neon green at the corner of his workstation like some kind of twisted achievement badge. 3,218 beings from across the galaxy, each one stepping up to his checkpoint at Meridian Point Station, each one getting the full treatment. Biometric scan, genetic signature, threat assessment, and the inevitable awkward moment when the translator glitched and someone accidentally propositioned him instead of asking for directions to the food court. It was, to put it mildly, boring as hell. Meridian Point itself was anything but boring. The station hung in neutral space, like a massive crystalline flower, each petal a docking array for a different species' ships, the whole thing rotating slowly enough that you barely notice the artificial gravity doing its thing. It was the galaxy's premier diplomatic hub, the place where trade agreements got hammered out, cultural exchanges happened, and approximately 600 different species pretended to tolerate each other while secretly thinking their own cuisine was superior. Liam's job was to make sure none of those 600 species brought weapons, contraband, or planet-killing plagues through the main security checkpoint. Mostly, he made sure people stood still long enough for the scanner to do its job. "Next!" he called out, his voice carrying that special blend of professional courtesy and crushing ennui that only came from 3 years of checkpoint duty. The being that approached looked like someone had taken a praying mantis, crossed it with a Komodo dragon, and then given the whole thing an iridescent purple paint job. Zrel. Liam recognized the species immediately. They were uncommon but not rare, usually showing up as part of mining consortiums or geological survey teams. This one wore the flowing ceremonial robes that marked it as part of a diplomatic delegation, which meant extra paperwork if anything went wrong. "Welcome to Meridian Point," Liam said, gesturing to the scanning platform. "Please step onto the marked area and remain still while the system processes your genetic signature." The Zrel, moving with that disconcerting fluidity that always made Liam think of oil flowing uphill, positioned itself on the platform. Its compound eyes, all 6 of them, swiveled independently, taking in the checkpoint with what he'd learned to recognize as mild disdain. Diplomats. Same attitude, regardless of how many limbs they had. Liam initiated the scan. The scanner hummed. It always hummed, a low vibration that you felt in your teeth more than heard. Standard procedure. The system would analyze the subject's genetic makeup, cross-reference it against the station's database of known species, flag any biological hazards, and assign a unique identifier for tracking purposes. The whole process took maybe 10 seconds. Except this time, the scanner hummed for 5 seconds, then made a sound Liam had never heard before. A kind of confused chirp, like a bird that just flew into a clean window. Then the screen exploded with error messages. Not literally exploded. That would have been more exciting. Instead, the display filled with cascading red text, warnings piling on top of warnings, each one contradicting the last. Genetic anomaly detected. Species classification uncertain. Biohazard potential. Unknown. And then, right at the top in letters that seemed almost accusatory, impossible genetic overlap with station personnel. Liam stared at the screen. Then he stared at the Zrel. Then he stared at the screen again, because surely he'd misread it. "Ah," he said, which was not standard checkpoint protocol, but felt appropriate given the circumstances. The Zrel's translator crackled to life. "Is there a problem, human?" The voice was masculine, clipped, and carried the kind of irritation that suggested this was not this being's first time being delayed at a security checkpoint. "Just a technical issue," Liam said, rapidly pressing buttons to clear the error messages. "Let me run it again." He reset the system, double-checked the calibration, and initiated another scan. The Drell remained motionless on the platform, which Liam appreciated. At least someone here was being professional. The scanner hummed, chirped, exploded with the exact same error messages. Impossible genetic overlap with station personnel. Officer Liam, human, checkpoint 9. Overlap percentage, 68%. Liam felt his brain try to process that number and then politely decline. 68% genetic overlap. With him, and a bug lizard thing from the other side of the galaxy. "Okay," he said slowly. "Okay, that's not normal." "What is not normal?" the Drell asked, and now there was a different tone in the synthesized voice. Curiosity, maybe, or concern. Hard to tell with species that communicated partially through pheromones. "The system is saying we share genetic material," Liam said, because there was no polite way to phrase that. "Like a lot of genetic material, which should be impossible because you're, you and I'm me, and we evolved on planets that are—" He checked his terminal. 38,000 light-years apart. The Drell went very still. Not regular still. The kind of still that predators do right before they decide whether to fight or flee. "That is indeed impossible," the Drell said carefully. "Drell biochemistry is silicon-based with crystalline protein structures. Human biochemistry is carbon-based with amino acid chains. We should share approximately 0 genetic material, perhaps 0.003%, if we are being generous with the definition of genetic material." "Yeah, that's what I thought too," Liam muttered, pulling up the scanner's diagnostic logs. Everything checked out. The system was functioning perfectly, which meant either the scanner had developed a sense of humor or reality had just gotten significantly weirder. Behind him, he heard the unmistakable sound of his supervisor approaching. 4 heavy footfalls in perfect rhythm, like a drummer who really committed to the beat. Officer Runo, all 4 arms and 12 feet of methodical Quelton efficiency, loomed over Liam's workstation. "Problem?" he asked, in that rumbling baritone that made everything sound like a threat assessment. "Maybe," Liam said. "The scanner's showing a massive genetic overlap between me and our diplomatic guest here. 68%. I've run it twice." Runo's primary eyes narrowed, while his secondary eyes scanned the screen. Queltors were famous for their ability to multitask, which made them excellent supervisors and absolutely terrifying at poker. "Step aside," Runo said. Liam stepped aside. Runo ran the scan himself, using all 4 hands to input commands with the kind of speed that always made Liam feel inadequate. The scanner hummed, chirped, displayed the same impossible results. Runo ran it again. Same results. He ran it a 3rd time, because Quelters believed in the power of triple-checking everything. Still the same. "Huh," Runo said, which coming from him was the equivalent of a 5-minute panic attack. "Huh, indeed," the Drell said dryly. "I am Ixolt, representing the Drell Geological Consortium. I assure you, I am not carrying any contraband, nor am I a secret human hybrid sent to infiltrate your station. This is as surprising to me as it is to you." Liam looked at Ixolt. Really looked, trying to see any resemblance. Purple exoskeleton, compound eyes, mandibles that could probably crack titanium. 6 limbs, counting the secondary manipulator arms. Yeah, no. They definitely didn't share a grandparent. Regulations are clear on genetic anomalies, Runo said, already pulling up the relevant protocols on his own terminal. Section 12, paragraph 91. Any unexplained genetic markers or cross-species compatibility must be reported to the Medical Research Division immediately for analysis and threat assessment. I am not a threat, Ixolt said, his mandibles clicking, in what Liam had learned was the Zrel equivalent of an annoyed sigh. Probably not, Runo agreed, but regulations are regulations. Officer Liam, you'll need to escort our guest to Medical Research Wing 3. Dr. Una will want to see this. Me? Liam asked. Why me? Runo fixed him with all four eyes, which was the Quelton equivalent of saying, Are you seriously asking me that question right now? Because you're the other half of this impossible genetic equation, Runo said patiently. Dr. Una will need to scan you both, together. Try not to panic when she starts theorizing out loud. She gets excited about mysteries. Liam had met Dr. Una exactly once, during his initial station medical clearance 3 years ago. She'd spent 20 minutes explaining the fascinating complexity of his appendix, an organ she found bafflingly pointless, while 3 of her tentacles simultaneously ran tests, took notes, and consumed what looked like a smoothie made of motor oil and regret. He was not looking forward to round 2. Fine, he said, logging out of his terminal and grabbing his security pad. Come on, Ixolt. Let's go figure out why the universe thinks we're related. Ixolt stepped down from the scanner platform, his robes flowing around him like liquid silk. This is highly irregular. You're telling me, Liam muttered. I've had weird days on this station, but surprise genetic relative from across the galaxy is a new one. They walked through the checkpoint, past the growing line of waiting travelers who stared at them with the universal expression of people whose day was being delayed by bureaucracy. Liam gave them an apologetic shrug. Behind him, he heard Runo already calling the next person forward, because the universe stopped for no one, not even impossible genetic mysteries. The corridors of Meridian Point were wide enough to accommodate beings ranging from 3 inches to 30 feet tall, which meant they always felt slightly too big for human comfort. The walls were that generic off-white that seemed to be a universal constant across all space stations, because apparently no species in the galaxy had figured out interior decorating. Liam and Ixolt walked in silence for a bit, the only sound the soft clicking of Ixolt's claws against the deck plating. So, Liam said, because awkward silence had never been his strong suit. Geological consortium, huh? You guys blow up planets for fun, or is that just a hobby? Ixolt's translator interpreted what might have been a laugh. We survey planets for mineral resources. Very boring work. Lots of rock samples. Occasional cave systems. Nothing explodes unless we make a mistake with the seismic charges. Sounds safer than my job. Your job is standing at a checkpoint scanning people. Yeah, and look where that got me. Apparently genetically linked to a giant purple mantis dragon. I prefer distinguished Zrel diplomat, but your description has a certain crude accuracy. Liam found himself grinning. At least his maybe-sort-of relative had a sense of humor. They took a lift down 3 levels, down being a relative term on a rotating station, and emerged into the medical research wing. The air here smelled different, sharper, with that antiseptic tang that medical facilities across the galaxy seemed to agree was mandatory. Through transparent walls, Liam could see various labs where scientists of a dozen different species poked, prodded, and analyzed things that probably shouldn't be poked, prodded, or analyzed. At the end of the corridor, in a lab that looked like a hurricane had gotten into a fight with a library, and both had lost, was Dr. Una. She was a Ralthan, which meant she looked like someone had taken an O-5D octopus, given it a PhD, and then powered it entirely on caffeine and scientific curiosity. 6 tentacles, each one capable of independent action, surrounded a central body that housed what Liam assumed was a brain, though Ralthan anatomy still confused him. Her skin shifted colors as she worked, cycling through blues and greens in patterns that supposedly indicated her emotional state. Right now, she was violet with excitement, which was never a good sign. "Liam!" she called out, 3 tentacles waving in greeting, while the others continued working on what looked like a dissected piece of technology. "And Azrael, Runo sent me a preliminary message about your situation. This is fascinating. Utterly fascinating. Come in, come in." Her voice came from a translator unit mounted on her workstation, but it carried her enthusiasm perfectly. Too perfectly. Liam braced himself. "Dr. Una," he said politely. "This is Ixolt. We have a situation." "A genetic impossibility," Una said gleefully, abandoning her work to flow across the lab toward them. Ralthans didn't exactly walk. They sort of undulated. 68% overlap between a human and a Zrel. Do you understand how impossible that is? It's like finding out water and antimatter decided to share a recipe. I need samples. Immediately. Both of you. On the scanning beds. Now." Ixolt looked at Liam. Liam looked at Ixolt. "She's always like this?" Ixolt asked. "I've only met her once before," Liam admitted. "But, yeah, probably." They climbed onto the indicated scanning beds, which adjusted automatically to accommodate their vastly different physiologies. Above them, an array of sensors descended from the ceiling like mechanical spiders, because apparently someone in medical equipment design had decided everyone needed nightmares. "This will take approximately 18 minutes, Una announced, her tentacles flying across multiple control panels simultaneously. "I need full genetic sequencing, protein structure analysis, RNA comparison, and mitochondrial mapping. Also, Liam, when was your last physical?" 6 months ago?" "Terrible! You should get checked every 3 months. Humans are so delicate." One of her tentacles pointed accusingly at him, while another prepared a sample collection device. "I'm perfectly healthy," Liam protested. "So you think. But do you know what your telomere length is? Your cellular repair efficiency? Your microbiome diversity index? No? Exactly. This is why I worry." Una's colors shifted to concerned orange for a moment before snapping back to excited violet. "Now hold still. This won't hurt. Probably." The scanners hummed to life, and Liam felt the familiar tingle of deep tissue scanning washing over him. Beside him, Ixolt remained perfectly still, which made sense given that Zrel apparently had way better discipline than humans when it came to medical procedures. Minutes ticked by. Una muttered to herself. Herself? Themselves? In what sounded like mathematical equations mixed with Ralthan profanity. Her tentacles never stopped moving, pulling up data streams, cross-referencing databases, and occasionally pausing to make notes on a holographic display that hung in the air like captured lightning. Then, all at once, she went completely still. Her colors drained to a pale, shocked white. "Oh," she said quietly. "Oh no." Liam's stomach dropped. "What? What's oh no? Is it a disease? Am I dying? Is he dying? Are we both dying?" "Worse," Una whispered, and now her voice carried none of its earlier enthusiasm. "Much worse. The overlap is real. It's not a scanner error. It's not contamination. It's not a statistical fluke." Ixolt's mandibles clicked rapidly. "Then what is it?" Una turned to face them, all 6 tentacles trembling slightly. "It's deliberate," she said. "Someone Something engineered this, both of you. You share genetic markers that were artificially inserted into your species' genomes. The same markers. The exact same markers. The lab suddenly felt very cold. "What are you saying?" Liam asked, though part of him already knew the answer and desperately didn't want to hear it. Una's colors shifted to something Liam had never seen before, a deep, troubled purple-black. "I'm saying someone has been playing God with the galaxy's species," she said quietly. "And you two are the proof." The silence that followed Una's announcement was the kind of silence that made you aware of your own heartbeat, your own breathing, the fact that you existed in a universe that suddenly felt a lot less stable than it had 10 minutes ago. Liam sat up on the scanning bed, which beeped in protest. "Artificially inserted? You mean like genetic modification? Someone edited our DNA?" "Not yours specifically," Una said, her tentacles pulling up holographic displays that looked like impossible spirals of light and data. "Your species, plural, humans and Drell both carry identical artificial genetic sequences, markers that have no natural evolutionary explanation. They're too complex, too precise, too intentional." Ixolt remained motionless on his bed, but Liam could see the subtle shifts in his exoskeleton that suggested extreme agitation. "The Drell have always known we were modified," he said quietly. "Our creation myths speak of the reshaping, when our ancestors were changed by beings from beyond the stars. We assumed it was religious metaphor." "Apparently not," Una muttered, zooming in on a particular sequence. "Look at this. This right here is a compatibility marker. It's designed to allow two radically different biochemistries to recognize each other as genetically related. Carbon-based? Silicon-based? Doesn't matter. This sequence bridges the gap." Liam's head was spinning. "Wait. Back up. I need you to explain this like I'm 5 years old and also maybe having a panic attack." Una's colors shifted to a calmer blue, which he appreciated. Teaching mode, apparently. "Okay, simple version. DNA is like an instruction manual for building a living thing, yes? Now imagine someone went into your species' instruction manual thousands of years ago and added special chapters. Chapters that say, if you meet someone else with these same chapters, treat them like family. That's what these markers do." "Family," Ixolt repeated, his translator adding a strange harmonic to the word. "You're saying we were designed to be related?" "In a sense, yes. Not parent-child, not siblings, but part of the same project? Experiment? I don't have a word for it." Una's frustration was palpable, her tentacles gesturing wildly. Whoever did this wanted modified species to recognize each other when they eventually met, like leaving breadcrumbs across the galaxy. Liam slid off the scanning bed, needing to move, needing to do something with the nervous energy flooding his system. "This is insane. You're telling me humans didn't evolve naturally?" "I'm telling you someone edited your evolution at some point in your distant past," Una corrected. "The base human genome is still natural. But these markers? These were added. Deliberately. Skillfully. By someone with technology so advanced, it makes our current science look like children playing with rocks." A memory surfaced, unbidden. Liam was 6 years old, wrapped in a thermal blanket, being carried through the corridors of a rescue ship. Voices all around him asking questions he couldn't answer. "Where are your parents? What happened to the colony ship? Why can't you remember?" He'd never been able to answer those questions. The official story was that he'd been found in an escape pod, the sole survivor of a colony ship disaster. No records of his parents. No memories of his life before. The rescue crew had assumed trauma, And maybe they were right. But now... I was adopted, Liam said suddenly. Found as a kid. No biological family on record. I always thought it was just bad luck. Wrong place when a ship malfunctioned. He laughed, but it came out hollow. You think there's more to it? Una's colors shifted to thoughtful green. Possibly. Or possibly, you're just unlucky, and also happen to be part of a species that was genetically modified millennia ago. Correlation doesn't always mean causation. Comforting, Liam muttered. Ixolt finally moved, standing up from his scanning bed with that unsettling grace. Doctor, you said these markers exist in both our species. Have you checked for them in others? That's my next step, Una said, already moving to a different console. Give me a moment. I'm going to run a search through the station's genetic database. Every species that's passed through Meridian Point in the last 5 years has left a genetic signature in our records. If these markers show up elsewhere... Her tentacles flew across the controls with increasing speed. Data streams flickered past faster than Liam could process. He glanced at Ixolt, who was watching Una with an intensity that made his compound eyes seem to glow. How long have you known about the reshaping? Liam asked quietly. It's part of our cultural foundation, Ixolt replied. Every Drell child learns the story. That we were once simple crystalline organisms, barely sentient, until the architects came and elevated us, gave us intelligence, purpose, the ability to shape our world. His mandibles clicked softly. We celebrate it. It's our origin story, our proud history. The idea that it might be literally true. Scary? Clarifying, Ixolt said. My subspecies. We've always been different from other Drell. Slightly altered physiology, different cognitive patterns. We were told it was natural variation. But what if we were a second wave of modification? A refinement? Before Liam could respond, Una made a sound that his translator couldn't interpret, but which definitely communicated shock. Found them, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Oh, stars. Oh, burning stars. Found what? Liam asked, though dread was already pooling in his stomach. Una turned, and her colors were cycling rapidly through emotions Liam couldn't name. 16 species. 16 different intelligent species that have passed through this station, all carrying the same artificial markers. All modified by the same hand. She pulled up a holographic list. Names and images floated in the air. Species Liam recognized and species he'd never seen before. Bipeds, quadrupeds, gaseous entities, hive minds. Nothing physically similar. Nothing that should share any genetic material at all. 16, Ixolt breathed. A diaspora. A garden, Una corrected grimly. Someone planted seeds across the galaxy and then walked away to see what would grow. And now, thousands or millions of years later, the plants are finally meeting each other and realizing they came from the same gardener. Liam stared at the list, his mind racing. So what do we do? Report this? Go public? This changes everything. For everyone. That's the question, Una said. Because I guarantee someone already knows. Information this big doesn't stay hidden unless people work very hard to keep it buried. As if summoned by her words, the lab's door hissed open. 3 security officers stood in the doorway, wearing the black uniforms of station intelligence. Behind them was a human man in a commander's uniform, his face carved from stone and bad decisions. Dr. Una, the man said pleasantly. Officer Liam, and our Drell guest. I'm afraid I'm going to need all 3 of you to come with me. By order of station intelligence, you're being placed under protective quarantine pending a full security review. His smile didn't reach his eyes. "The word you're looking for," he added, "is immediately." Una's colors flashed bright red. Ralthan for absolutely not, and 3 of her tentacles immediately moved to positions that Liam recognized from self-defense training. The ID universal language of "come any closer and find out what happens." "Commander Joss," she said, her voice dropping several degrees below freezing, "I was not aware that conducting legitimate scientific research now requires intelligence oversight." Joss, apparently that was his name, stepped into the lab with the kind of casual confidence that came from either years of experience or breathtaking stupidity. Liam was betting on the former, which made this situation considerably worse. "Legitimate research is always welcome," Joss said smoothly. "Legitimate research that threatens galactic stability, however, requires a more delicate approach. I'm sure you understand." "Threatens stability?" Ixilt moved forward, his posture shifting into something that Liam's hindbrain recognized as aggressive, despite never having seen a Jrel fight stance before. "Interesting. We discovered evidence of ancient genetic manipulation. That threatens no one." "On the contrary," Joss replied, his hand resting casually on his sidearm. "Not threatening, not yet. Just present. It threatens everyone. Imagine what happens when 16 species simultaneously learn their entire evolutionary history is artificial. When they discover they're not truly independent, that they're parts of someone else's grand design." He smiled that empty smile again. "Wars have started over less." Liam's security training kicked in, analyzing the situation with uncomfortable clarity. 3 guards at the door, all armed. Joss himself, clearly enhanced based on the way he moved. Too balanced, too ready. Against that, 1 human security officer with a stunner, 1 scientist with tentacles, and 1 diplomatic alien who might or might not have combat training. The math wasn't good, but the math also assumed they were going to fight, and Liam had learned a long time ago that sometimes the best security protocol was talking very fast. "So, you already knew," Liam said, keeping his voice level. "About the markers, the modifications, all of it." Joss's expression flickered, just for a moment, with something that might have been respect. "Human intelligence has known for approximately 8 years. We discovered it during a classified xenobiology project. Since then, we've been working with other species' intelligence services to manage the information." "Manage?" Una spat. "You mean bury?" "I mean protect," Joss corrected. "The galaxy isn't ready for this truth. Maybe it never will be. Do you know what happened on Quelton Prime when a radical religious group claimed their gods were ancient aliens? 17 million dead in the riots. Now multiply that by 16 species, all learning simultaneously that their origins are manufactured." Ixolt's mandibles clicked rapidly. "So your solution is ignorance? Keep entire civilizations in the dark about their own nature?" "My solution is stability," Joss said. "And right now, that means the 3 of you come with me quietly. We secure all your research, and this discovery gets filed away where it can't hurt anyone." Liam watched Una's tentacles tense. He recognized that posture too. She was about to do something stupid, and probably heroic, and definitely going to get them all stunned. Time for Plan B, which he made up on the spot. "Already sent it," Liam said casually. Everyone froze. Joss's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" "The research, the data, all those genetic markers and species lists." Liam pulled out his personal comm unit, waving it slightly. "Sent it to my backup drive about 5 minutes ago. You know, standard security protocol. Always maintain data redundancy in case of equipment failure or, say, suspicious intelligence officers trying to memory hole galaxy-altering discoveries. He was lying through his teeth. He hadn't sent anything anywhere. But Joss didn't know that. Una, bless her brilliant tentacled mind, caught on immediately. Oh yes, standard procedure in my lab. All significant findings get automatically backed up to the station's main research database, probably already distributed to about, 300 different scientific institutions across the station? Also a lie. Probably. Liam wasn't entirely sure how Una's lab protocols worked. Ixolt remained silent, but Liam saw one of his secondary arms move slightly toward his ceremonial robes, reaching for something. A weapon? A communicator? Liam desperately hoped it was option 2. Joss's casual demeanor cracked. Just slightly. Just enough. You're bluffing. Maybe, Liam agreed cheerfully. Want to bet 16 species worth of secrets on it? Because if you stun us right now, and it turns out I'm telling the truth, you'll have approximately 30 minutes before every major news outlet in the galaxy gets an anonymous data packet containing proof that half the known intelligent species are genetically modified science projects. The silence that followed was heavy enough to collapse into a black hole. One of the guards shifted uncomfortably. Sir? Joss held up a hand, his eyes never leaving Liam's face. You're smarter than your personnel file suggested. My personnel file says I once accidentally locked myself in a supply closet for 6 hours, Liam said. Low bar. The question becomes, Joss continued, ignoring him. What do you want? Because if you're smart enough to back up the data, you're smart enough to know you can't leave this station. I can lock down every transport, every shuttle, every personal craft. You'd be trapped here with information that makes you a target for every intelligence service in the galaxy. Maybe we don't want to leave, Una said quietly. Maybe we want answers. Real ones. Not the sanitized version you're peddling. Joss laughed. Actually laughed. It wasn't a pleasant sound. Answers? Fine. Here's an answer. We don't know who the architects were. We don't know why they modified so many species. We don't know if they're still out there watching, or if they're extinct, or if they even care that their little experiment is running around the galaxy having an identity crisis. His smile disappeared. We know enough to be terrified, and not enough to do anything about it. That's the truth. Happy? Thrilled, Ixolt said dryly. And the other modified species? Do they know? Some do, some don't. Depends on their government structure, their cultural readiness, their potential for violent upheaval. Joss shrugged. It's need to know, and congratulations, you 3 now need to know. Which means you get a choice. What choice? Liam asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Come with me, voluntarily. Let us debrief you, read you into the program, make you part of the solution instead of the problem. Joss gestured toward the door. Or refuse, and I lock down this station, confiscate all your research, and you spend the next few months in comfortable detention while we sort out what to do with you. Those are terrible options, Una observed. Yes, Joss agreed. Welcome to intelligence work. It's all terrible options, and you pick the least terrible one and hope you can sleep at night. Liam looked at Una. Una looked at Ixolt. Ixolt looked at Liam. There's a third option, Liam said slowly. Which is? We run. Una's colors flashed brilliant violet. I was hoping you'd say that. What happened next occurred very fast. Una hit a button on her console. Every light in the lab immediately died, plunging them into darkness. Emergency lighting kicked in half a second later, but half a second was all Una needed. Her tentacles lashed out, grabbing equipment, research pads, anything not bolted down, while simultaneously pulling open a maintenance panel in the wall. "Go!" she shouted. "Maintenance tunnel! Now!" Ixolt moved with shocking speed, his robes billowing as he dove toward the opening. Liam was right behind him, his stunner drawn now, firing blind shots toward the doorway to keep Joss and his guards back. "You're making this worse," Joss shouted over the alarm that had started wailing. "Probably," Liam agreed, diving through the maintenance panel after Ixolt. Una came last, her tentacles working frantically to seal the panel behind them, while also carrying what looked like half her lab in various appendages. They were in the maintenance tunnels now, narrow, dark, filled with pipes and conduits and the ever-present hum of the station's systems. Liam's heart was hammering. They'd just assaulted intelligence officers. They were fugitives now. This was either the bravest or stupidest thing he'd ever done. Possibly both. "Anyone have a plan?" Ixolt asked, his voice remarkably calm for someone currently fleeing through a maintenance tunnel. "Working on it," Liam gasped. "Work faster," Una suggested, "because in about 2 minutes, Joss is going to seal every exit on this station, and we'll be trapped like fish in a very small, very official barrel." Right. Plan. He needed a plan. Liam's mind raced, thinking through station layout, security protocols, everything he'd learned in 3 years of checkpoint duty. Then it hit him. "The archives," he said. "The restricted archives. If Joss's people have known about this for 8 years, they've been researching it, which means they have data, real data, about the architects, about the modifications, about all of it. The archives are in the most secure section of the station," Ixolt pointed out. "I know. They'll be expecting us to run away, not toward sensitive data." "I know. This is a monumentally stupid idea." "I know," Liam grinned in the darkness, "but it's the only stupid idea we've got. So unless someone has a better plan in the next 30 seconds... Silence. Just the sound of their movement through the tunnels and the distant wail of alarms. "The archives it is," Una said grimly. And they ran. The maintenance tunnels of Meridian Point were not designed for high-speed chases. They were designed for small repair drones and the occasional unfortunate maintenance worker who drew the short straw. Which meant that Liam, Ixolt, and Una spent the next 10 minutes performing what could only be described as the galaxy's most undignified escape attempt. Liam scraped his shoulder on a protruding pipe. Ixolt's robes caught on a ventilation grate, tearing with a sound like disappointed silk. Una, being tentacled and flexible, had the easiest time of it, but even she occasionally muttered Ralthan curses that the translator wisely declined to interpret. "Left here," Liam gasped, checking his mental map of the station. "2 more intersections, then we can access the service elevator that goes to the archives level." "Assuming Joss hasn't locked it down," Ixolt pointed out, his breathing surprisingly steady for someone who'd just sprinted half a kilometer through cramped tunnels. "He will have," Una said, "but I can override it. Probably. Maybe. Give me 60% odds." "I'll take those odds," Liam muttered. They reached the service elevator, a bare-bones cargo lift that smelled faintly of industrial lubricant and regret. Una immediately attached 2 tentacles to the control panel, her skin shifting through rapid color changes as she worked. "Joss has locked down all standard access," she reported, "but he's using human security protocols, which means he's relying on digital locks and biometric scanners. Very sophisticated, very thorough, very..." The elevator doors hissed open. Vulnerable to someone who knows the Ralthan backdoor codes that the station's original designers installed and then conveniently forgot to mention to current management, Una finished smugly. They piled into the elevator, Liam hit the button for archives level, and they began descending into the most restricted section of Meridian Point. "So," Ixolt said conversationally, as if they weren't currently fleeing from station security, "anyone want to discuss what we actually do if we find this information? Because I notice our plan currently ends at break into restricted archives and not at escape the station with galaxy-altering secrets." Liam had been trying very hard not to think about that part. "One problem at a time," he said. "Right now, I just want to know the truth. The real truth. Not the sanitized version Joss was selling. And then we make a decision. Based on what we find." Liam looked at his unlikely companions, a tentacled scientist whose colors were still cycling with adrenaline, and a diplomatic alien who was apparently his genetically engineered cousin from across the galaxy. "Together. We decide together." The elevator slowed, stopped. The doors opened onto a corridor that looked like every secure facility Liam had ever seen. Pristine white walls, subdued lighting, and enough security cameras to make paranoia seem reasonable. "Those cameras are a problem," Ixolt observed. "Not if they think we're supposed to be here," Una said, already working on a wall panel. "I'm looping the feed. They'll see an empty corridor for the next 8 minutes. After that, we're exposed." "Then we have 8 minutes," Liam said. "Move." The archive's entrance was protected by a biometric lock that required retinal scan, fingerprint, and genetic verification. Liam stared at it, feeling his brief surge of confidence evaporate. "Okay, I didn't think this part through." "Clearly," Ixolt said, "although in your defense, we were being chased by armed intelligence officers at the time." Una flowed up to the scanner, examining it with multiple tentacles. "This is actually interesting. It's not just checking for authorized personnel. It's checking for genetic markers. Specifically—" She trailed off, her colors shifting to surprised orange. "Specifically what?" Liam asked. "Specifically the markers we just discovered," Una said slowly. "The artificial ones. The ones that link modified species together. This lock won't open for just anyone on the station. It'll only open for someone carrying the architect modifications." The implications hit Liam like a physical blow. "They've been using the modifications as a security system? That's brilliant and horrifying in equal measure," Una finished. "It means only people who are part of the modified species can access information about the modified species. A self-selecting security system." Ixolt moved forward. "Then let's test it." He placed his primary manipulator against the scanner. The device hummed, analyzing his genetic signature with that same confused chirp Liam had heard at the checkpoint. Then, with a soft chime, the door unlocked. "Well," Ixolt said quietly, "that's confirmation, at least." They entered the archives, and Liam's breath caught. The room was massive, far larger than the corridor suggested. Holographic displays filled the space like frozen fireflies, each one containing data streams, genetic maps, historical records. At the center was a projection so large it seemed to swallow the room, a map of the galaxy with 16 points highlighted in pulsing light. 16 modified species, 16 seeds planted across the stars. Una immediately dove into the nearest data terminal, her tentacles moving faster than Liam could track. "Oh, stars! Oh, burning stars! There's so much here. Millennia of research, archaeological findings, genetic analysis going back thousands of years." "What does it say?" Liam asked, moving closer to the central display. "Who were the architects? Why did they do this?" "They don't know," Una said, scanning through files with increasing speed. Human intelligence has been investigating for 8 years, and they don't know. The architects left no messages, no instructions, no explanation. Just the modifications themselves, and... She stopped, went completely still. Her colors drained to shocked white again. "And what?" Ixolt prompted. "And one more thing," Una whispered. "One pattern they've identified. The 16 species weren't modified randomly. They were modified to be compatible, not just genetically, culturally, psychologically. Every modified species has certain traits in common: adaptability, curiosity, capacity for cooperation, despite differences." Liam stared at the galactic map, watching the 16 points pulse in synchronized rhythm. They were building something. The architects. They weren't just experimenting, they were creating a family. Ixolt finished, his voice carrying an emotion the translator couldn't quite capture. Across the stars, species that would eventually find each other and recognize kinship despite having nothing physical in common. "But why?" Liam asked. "What's the point?" "Maybe there is no point," Una said quietly. "Or maybe the point is exactly what you just said. Family. Connection. The knowledge that we're not alone, that we're part of something larger." Her colors shifted to contemplative blue. Maybe the architects wanted to prove that kinship transcends biology. That family is a choice, not an accident of genetics. Liam looked at the data surrounding them, centuries of secrets and buried truths. He thought about Joss's argument, that this information was too dangerous, that it would destabilize the galaxy, that people weren't ready. And he thought about what he'd learned in 3 years of checkpoint duty, watching hundreds of species interact, cooperate, sometimes conflict, but always, eventually, find common ground. "We're releasing it," he said. Una's tentacles stopped moving. "What?" "The data, all of it. We're releasing it to every major scientific institution, news outlet, and government in the galaxy." Liam turned to face them. "Joss is wrong. People deserve the truth. All people. Every modified species has a right to know their own history." "It'll cause chaos," Ixolt said, but there was something in his voice that suggested he didn't entirely disagree. "Maybe," Liam admitted. "Probably. But keeping it secret? That's worse. That's deciding for billions of beings that they can't handle the truth about themselves. And I don't care if it's uncomfortable or destabilizing or scary. You don't build trust by lying. You build it by being honest, even when honesty is hard." Una's colors cycled rapidly through emotions. Finally, she settled on determined violet. "The architects gave us the capacity for cooperation despite differences. Let's see if they were right." Her tentacles moved to a different console. "I can broadcast from here. Wide spectrum, every communication channel. By the time Joss figures out what we're doing, it'll be too late to stop." "Do it," Liam said. "Wait." Ixolt moved forward, one claw extended. "If we do this, there's no going back. Our lives change, forever. We become the people who told the galaxy it was an experiment." "I know. We'll be famous, or infamous, possibly hunted, definitely scrutinized." "I know." Ixolt's mandibles clicked in what Liam had learned was amusement. "Just making sure you'd thought it through." He turned to Una. "Send it." Una's tentacles flew across the controls, compiling all research, stripping classified markers, adding context documentation, preparing broadcast protocol, and sent. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the room's alarms started screaming. The door burst open. Joss stood there, breathing hard, his weapon drawn. Behind him, a dozen security officers filed in, all armed, all looking very much like people who'd just run through maintenance tunnels and were not happy about it. "You idiots," Joss said, but there was something in his voice that wasn't entirely anger. "You absolute idiots. Do you have any idea what you've just done?" "Yeah," Liam said, smiling. "We told the truth. Apparently that's frowned upon in intelligence work." Joss stared at them for a long moment. Then, to Liam's complete shock, he holstered his weapon and started laughing. Deep, genuine laughter that sounded like it was surprising even him. "What's funny?" Una asked suspiciously. "I am," Joss said, wiping his eyes. "I spent 8 years protecting this secret. 8 years lying, covering up, managing information, and you three just broadcast it to the entire galaxy in 20 minutes. He shook his head. "You want to know the worst part? I'm relieved. I'm actually relieved." He walked over to a console and pulled up a status display. Already, responses were flooding in from across the station, across the galaxy. News organizations demanding confirmation. Scientific institutions requesting full data access. Governments issuing statements ranging from denial to curiosity to outrage. "It's out there now," Joss said quietly. "No taking it back. No burying it. The galaxy knows." He looked at Liam. "You better hope the architects knew what they were doing when they made us all compatible, because we're about to find out if kinship really does transcend biology." 3 months later, Liam stood on the observation deck of Meridian Point, watching ships arrive from 16 different star systems. Modified species, coming to meet their genetic cousins for the first time. Coming to ask questions, share research, and try to understand what it meant to be part of an ancient experiment in connection. Beside him, Ixolt held what passed for a Jrel drinking vessel filled with something that smelled like fermented minerals and looked like liquid sunset. "Your human friends keep asking me how I introduce you," Ixolt said conversationally. "Oh yeah? What do you tell them?" Ixolt's mandibles clicked with amusement. "I tell them the truth, that you're Liam, that you're stubborn, impulsive, occasionally brilliant, and you make decisions that would give any reasonable security officer a panic attack." "That's a terrible introduction." "I'm not finished." Ixolt turned to face him, compound eyes reflecting the starlight streaming through the observation window. "I tell them you're family. Not because some ancient beings decided to play with our genetics. Not because a scanner said we're compatible. But because when it mattered, you chose truth over comfort. You chose connection over safety." Liam felt something warm settle in his chest. "Yeah? Yeah." Ixolt raised his vessel. "The scanner said impossible genetic overlap. You said that's family. Turns out you were right." They stood together, human and Jrel, carbon and silicon, 2 beings from opposite sides of the galaxy who should have had nothing in common, and watched their extended family arrive home. Somewhere out there, maybe the architects were watching. Maybe they were pleased. Maybe they were long gone and didn't care at all. It didn't matter. What mattered was this. Family wasn't about where you came from. It was about what you chose to build together. And they were just getting started.